Hello, my name is Ilan Madjar with xLM Solutions, and today I'll be talking about developing your own AI agent to various PLM systems out there by leveraging the MCP model. As part of this presentation, I will also demonstrate a basic AI agent connection to 3D Experience and SOLIDWORKS PDM using the commercial models such as OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Claude. But this demo can apply to any PLM or PDM system out there. The presentation is just a sneak peek and will be followed by a more in-depth webinar later this year. So I encourage you to stay tuned and follow our channels for more information regarding the topic and AI and PLM in general in the upcoming webinar. Before we jump into the demo, let's talk about AI agents. What are AI agents? And there's plenty of material out there. I encourage you to Google it and educate yourself. But essentially, these are autonomous systems that perform tasks on behalf of users. And the key thing is they're context aware and adaptive to workflow. So AI agents essentially differ from traditional automation by the fact that they can learn. There's a concept of machine learning and training those models, and then using the AI to expand and get more information for external systems. In PLM, agent can reduce manual effort in data retrieval, decision support. Various examples could be BOM differences, inaccuracies, risk analysis, compliance, supply chain efficiency, and so on. So the focus today is talk about specifically how can we develop the AI agents and the technology behind. But let's first review the traditional approach, the traditional integration model. In those cases, you would have your model, whether it's your own model that you've developed and trained, or training a model that's available out there. The models would rely on direct API to communicate with the various external systems, whether it's 3D Experience, SOLIDWORKS PDM, Eris, or any of the other Siemens products, etc. Each source requires its own custom code. There was a lot of maintenance and upgrades, or if any of the system changed their API. And so for developers, you have to maintain multiple API-specific integration, which is not always scalable, and there's a lot of security issues and whatnot. So the focus in today's demo and presentation is on the MCP model or standard for building such integration or extending your AI model's capability by interacting with external system, and the benefits over the traditional API approach. And using the MCP and developing an MCP server, the AI agent essentially interacts through that one single server. It standardized the request and the response, so it's a standard protocol versus bespoke APIs. It's one integration for all those external systems that you may have in your organization or out there for that matter. It's a secure, scalable, and more future-proof from a maintenance standpoint. And so it's basically a standardized way for AI models, whether it's a model you've developed or train a model that's available out there. So for the AI models, an application to connect to various external systems, sources, tools. In my example, I'll demonstrate 3D Experience and SOLIDWORKS PDM. And it's really analogous to a USB-C physical device that can connect various is an adapter for a universal adapter for various physical devices, like a plug and play. And as part of this protocol, there's a few steps on a very high level. So your host application, when it's calling the AI model you're using, the model goes through a discovery process with the MCP server. There's a reflection process where it exposes the various tools to the model. The model then goes through a contextual understanding process where it can take a user prompt and identify, based on the context, the relevant tool that it needs to invoke. Let's look at a few examples of using the MCP as a way for several AI models and applications to connect to various external data sources, tools, and services. And in my case, I will be using the 3D Experience and SOLIDWORKS PDM from the Dassault portfolio, but for that matter, it could be any other PLM system, ERP, vendor management, etc. I'm only going to show the finished product, not what's happening behind the scenes and how to configure it, which will be reviewed in a follow-up webinar probably later this year. My first example will be using the Claude AI desktop application. Those of you who are not familiar with Claude is a powerful chatbot from Anthropic. I already configured the MCP tools so that Claude, the model, can essentially, based off reflection, identify the proper tools and access the necessary tools based on the user prompt, based on the context. I've developed a very simple tool to retrieve data from those systems based on a part number. And the way agent work, just like if you would work with ChatGPT or Claude, if you run and ask for a weather or book a ticket, it obviously doesn't know how to make this transaction or request, and it goes and searches the web for through agents and book your tickets and come up with the weather information, etc. So the same thing will work in this case, where the model, the chat tool, will actually, through the reflection, interact with the proper MCP tool to retrieve the data from those various external systems. And so I'm going to take a prompt that I prepared in advance, and we'll ask Claude to retrieve this information. And notice that it immediately detects, based on the language context, that there's a tool, an MCP tool, that is relevant to retrieve this information. It's called Platform 3DX, which I've developed, and I intentionally left the permission thing so you can see that the tool is identified, though if you select the allow always, obviously you won't be prompted, it will happen automatically. So I'm going to allow this to retrieve the data from 3D Experience. And now the AI tool will interact with 3D Experience to get the relevant information. And now it detects that there's another tool which is called Get Platform SOLIDWORKS PDM. It's going to try and get the same information for this part from SOLIDWORKS PDM. Okay, and you can see that now the information is presented, and from here on you can use the AI to do its normal thing, such as and at this point this is all the AI tool, the chat tool, doing its own thing. And here we go with the image generation. Again, this is all the information that is processed by the various chatbots and their technology, and you can download everything. But the point here I wanted to make is that the AI was able, through the agent, to access the various system. I can even tell it to make some comparison. And you get your comparison table, which again, this is all the chat tool, but you get the point. Okay, so let's look at a couple other application and example. I was using Claude in this case. Okay, the second example I wanted to show you is my own tool. So I wrote my own client tool. In this case, it's just a very simplistic console application that runs on my Windows environment. This could be a web application, this could be a widget and whatnot, but what's happening in the back end, it actually calls the exact same model. In this specific console, again, I use the Claude AI, but I can run the same prompts and interact with the model will still identify the same tools on my MCP server and use the same tools to access the various system. So for example, if I put this prompt in place, normally the chat, if you didn't have that MCP tool, will tell you give you some generic answer. I don't know how to retrieve the data, but would give you some recommendation. However, because the model in the backend identifies the tool, it can go and grab the information. This could work with OpenAI, just like chatbot does. It can work if you're more from the LLM or the Meta type of, you like those models, tools like GGOF and whatnot. But the point to make is that you can write your own application that interacts with the model. The model still picks up through that reflection, picks up on the necessary MCP tools and reflects the data. And this could all be, for example, in a widget or any other, your own custom web application. And the last example I want to show you is through ChatGPT, same thing, using the exact same MCP server in all cases. Okay, so I'm going to run my ChatGPT because I'm using in this environment a free subscription. I'm going to run it off of the web application, not from the desktop. In fact, it's easier to configure the MCP server on a desktop application, but I've chosen to use the web application, the web interface, and I use a third-party extension to register my MCP through the web. Again, it's easier to do when you're using your desktop application. But let me paste the exact same question, and in this case I wanted to show you that I have this tool as a set of tools which I've created. Again, some very basic quote-unquote dumb examples, get information from PDM and from 3D Experience. They're already registered with this third-party extension. Initially I'm going to run this this prompt. And let's say yes. And now it detects that it asked me if I wanted to search the PDM as well. I said yes, and again, now it detects the PDM tool, retrieves the same information. I can also ask for, at this point, this is all the chat, for some additional visuals. And you can see chat, and this is all the chat doing its own thing at this point. And again, if you give it better instructions, it will do things in a prettier way. You can even generate an image, so you can then later take it and put it in some PowerPoint reports and whatnot if needed. And it gives you some meaningless representation, but you get the point. And so what I've shown you today is, again, in this demo, is how to connect various chatbots, or really the models behind, and external system, extending them, essentially creating a very basic agent to connect to the 3D Experience in SOLIDWORKS PDM using the MCP standard. So now that you've seen the demo, let's talk about what I didn't cover in today's demo and presentation. So first, we went over the MCP high-level principle and concepts, but we didn't really go in depth into the behind the scenes, or I didn't show you any code. And also, we haven't really talked about AI model, machine learning, whether you want to develop your own model or train an existing model out there. Obviously, you'll do this not on the public platform, because you don't want to, from an IP consideration standpoint, you may want to have the proper hardware and have the model hosted in your environment. But we'll talk about the various processes of data collection, modeling, the pre-processing, the steps for modeling on a high level, deployment, and then it's a circular process where you then feed your data and keep going. And so we will be talking about this, as I mentioned earlier, in our coming webinar. So stay tuned for our information. Subscribe to our LinkedIn social media channel, our website. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll be notified of the next webinar.